Hi, everybody. If We're going to keep letting folks in out of the waiting room. If someone you think should be here is not yet here, feel free to send them a text and remind them. But y'all are in the right place. This is the 350 Mass campaign pitch meeting, where we're going to hear from a bunch of different leaders from across our network about some campaign ideas, what they think that we should launch into in 2025. And I am going through muting people. Do not be offended. One of the big goals of tonight is just to give everyone a chance to hear about our campaign ideas. So you'll notice that we might be muting folks. We might be interrupting some of the presenters, but this is all just to make sure everybody hears the presentations, everyone gets a chance to present, and as many people as we can will have a chance to take part in the question and answer session. So what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen. All right, so here we are, campaign pitch meeting, December 9th at 7 p.m. This is the same picture we used in the advertising, so y'all are here. You know what it is. And yeah, to go in a little bit more detail, we're going to start with just some introductions in the chat. I'm excited to see who's here. I know we have a big group. And then we'll go into some of the campaign presentations. We have 6 campaigns that we'll hear from tonight. That's the emissions-free buildings, the municipal action campaign, building smarter with our tax dollars, save money with clean heat, no on hydrogen, stop private jet expansion, make polluters pay, and then we'll share some next steps for campaign evaluation and prioritization. And I think there's some fun invitations to actions and events that we'll get to at the end too. So stick around. If there's people from your group who are not able to make it today, but man, they really want to hear about the 350 Mass campaigns, we'll be sure to record this. As you entered, you might have heard that we'll be recording. And so we'll share this recording with everybody. We'll share this presentation. We'll share any materials that come up tonight so that everyone has as much information as they need to have really good follow-up conversations with their own groups about these campaigns. Yeah, so maybe I will stop sharing just so we once again get the chance to look at all the people here. We got a big group. If you don't mind, why don't we share just in the chat, maybe your name and where you're coming from so we can see who's with us tonight. So give a second. This is always just a fun test of people's typing speed. See, we got Westwood and Medford, Newton, Brookline, Chatham, Newton, Lowell, Greater Franklin Node, Newton, Berkshires, Belmont, Newton well represented, love to see it. Boston, Jamaica Plain, Metro West Node. Oh, awesome. So good to see so many people. This is one of the reasons why we do not just events like this, but why I run campaigns, is we get to see our network come together. You get to see people from across the state, folks who are doing amazing local work, folks who are deeply a part of their communities. And yet when we come together, we get to share that power with one another. So as folks present their campaigns tonight, remember, these are statewide campaigns. These are campaigns that we say, hey, we could work on this together. This is an important issue. And if we all put our minds to this, if we all put our hands on this, we can really move it, and we can go farther than just any one node or any one working group or any one person working on this. So yeah, I'm looking at the chat again, more Berkshires, more Franklin, Concord, Boston. Welcome, y'all. This is very exciting. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Oh, maybe I'll give a little bit more of an overview, just because before we get to the campaigns, you know, not just the spirit of campaign selection, but sort of the actuals of it. What we do until now, it's been every 2 years, we select campaign priorities. These are campaigns that the whole network of 350 Mass agrees to work on. This last 2 years, we've worked on the emissions-free buildings campaign and the Make Polluters Pay campaign. Those are 2 campaigns that, you know, we made tabling materials, we did legislative lobbying, we did rallies around, and everyone across the network came and supported these campaigns in some way. Before that, we've done all kinds of legislative campaigning. We fought pipelines together. We've done, I mean, just in our last over a decade of organizing, we've been able to put our hearts and our minds to a lot of big ideas, and we've won some serious things. When I first started in 350 Mass in 2021, one of the campaigns we were working on was the Fair Share Amendment, the millionaire's tax. And through door knocking and phone banking and all kinds of rabble rousing, we won that. 350 Mass was a part of this big coalition that was pushing for that. And through our organizing, we won. Similarly, right, we've won this last year a lot of our legislative work. And so, once again, the campaigns operate under the idea that the work that we do together, we do most powerfully. And we've already seen our organizing model win. So the campaigns you hear tonight are looking into the future and seeing what we can do together next. So thanks y'all for introducing yourselves in the chat. Let's listen to some campaigns. What I'll do is share my screen. So you're looking back at this, hello. And what the format for tonight is each campaign will get 5 minutes to present. It's like a sharp 5 minutes. Like, hey, 4 minutes? Perfect. 5 minutes and like 4 seconds? No, 5 minutes. And I'm keeping it strict. Campaign leaders, I know that you're aware, keeping it strict just so that we can make time for every campaign. So 5 minutes of presentation, and then we're going to open it up for like 5 to 10 minutes question and answer. We know clarifying questions and just really thoughtful strategic questions will be some of the most important conversation we have tonight. So as you're hearing these campaigns, feel free to take notes, feel free to put questions in the chat, but after the presentation, I'll make sure to answer raised hands or, call on raised hands so that folks can answer. Yeah, and I figure we can feel it out, see how it works by trying. So emissions-free building campaign, there's a bunch of information up here, but what I'll do is I'll pass it to Marissa and Rand, who can walk us through this campaign. And you all let me know when you want me to take this down, and I'll show your faces rather than this slide. So Marissa and Rand, go for it.
Thank you. I'm going to be the one sort of talking for our campaign. So you could either leave that up or just show me. But hello, my name is Marissa Bovey. I'm presenting the Emissions-Free Buildings Through Municipal Action campaign proposal. This campaign aims to further emissions-free buildings and communities by supporting nodes in pursuing the opt-in specialized stretch code for interested municipalities, with support for pursuing climate leader community status options for those who have already enacted the opt-in specialized stretch code. We do intend for this campaign to continue to provide assistance for nodes that are working on a project selected during the prior version of this campaign. Adoption of the opt-in specialized stretch code was one of the local projects promoted during the first iteration of the emissions-free buildings campaign. We see this next phase as a more targeted continuation of the work the campaign has already started. Particularly, the community building focus of the prior campaign will be a crucial element of this new iteration. So as of November 15th, 48 municipalities have adopted the opt-in specialized stretch code in Massachusetts. Adoption of this code helps to shape future emissions for our communities for years to come. And we believe that community action is truly where the rubber meets the road in terms of enacting crucial environmental changes. Reducing emissions from buildings is critical also for achieving the state 2050 goals, and will take 90% of all communities in Massachusetts adopting the opt-in specialized stretch code, which is 316 communities. So there's a ways to go. Many communities also see adoption of this code as the first step towards pursuing climate leader community status. If they are already green communities, which is the majority of communities in the state. This campaign aims to have 13 municipalities adopt the opt-in specialized stretch code or move towards climate leader community status during its cycle. For those applying for climate leader community status, instead of pursuing the opt-in specialized stretch code, the campaign will help nodes to accomplish one item from those needed to apply for that status. Those options are being a green community in good standing, having a local body that advises on community clean energy and climate initiatives, committing to eliminate on-site fossil fuel use by 2050 in municipal buildings and operations, creating a municipal decarbonization roadmap, adopting a zero emission vehicle first policy, and of course, adopting the opt-in specialized stretch code. So those are the 6 for climate leader community status. For those pursuing the opt-in specialized stretch code, the campaign will work with the various 350 Mass nodes to contact communities and to help them develop plans to adopt the code. This will include helping identify points of contact within communities and the DOER, coaching from others with past experience in this issue, development of presentation and tabling materials, and assistance with public speaking and coalition building. And we see the second year of the campaign to being focused on implementing these plans. This campaign will target city and town governing bodies, local building inspectors, local business members, and community members using tactics such as speaking at town meetings, meeting with local officials, information sessions with the DOER representatives, local citizens, and business owners, and tabling and standouts in public spaces. We plan to mobilize DOER area representatives and various types of 350 Mass node members and other local groups related to climate or sustainability in our pursuit of this campaign. There are other groups already working to pass the opt-in specialized stretch code. These include Zero Carbon MA, MCAN, and the Sierra Club. We see this existing energy as helping us to draw from resources, but also potential connections that help strengthen our pursuit of this campaign's goals. Likely components are considered to be aspects of the local business and real estate developer and contractor communities, along with local climate change deniers, those who believe the code will increase costs and stifle development. There is also potential that recent political changes may lead opponents to be more outspoken than in the past, which could hinder our recruiting of support from individuals less comfortable with conflict. But we do not see this as an insurmountable obstacle to the campaign. We see this campaign working as either a priority or a non-priority campaign, as the work it aims to do is crucial. Overall emissions reductions benefit everybody in the state. It will also help us build presence in local communities while affecting positive changes and help Massachusetts achieve important climate goals. So that was most of what I had prepared. Might have gone through it a little faster than I intended, so my apologies.
You hit 5 minutes exactly.
Wow. Way to go, Marissa.
Yeah, everybody take note. That was a perfect presentation. And thank you, Marissa, also just for going first. Someone had to do it, but it's great to have you all leading us tonight. So seeing already a hand, what we'll do is I'm going to spotlight.
Rand was going to join me for the Q&A, yeah.
Yep. So you two are on, and then
Okay.
Demi, I see your hand if you would like to ask your question, and then Marissa and Rand, you'll have the chance to answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I was curious about this climate leader status and what are the benefits to the community for getting that status?
It's in some ways, I think it's similar to the green community status, which provides access to various grant mechanisms and things that communities can benefit from. I mean that's the main benefit to a town of achieving it, other than the benefits that come from actually doing the work that you do to get it.
Right. I was just wondering, why would a municipality be motivated to prioritize it? And are those grants private or are they state and federal?
I
From
think
my
it's mostly,
understanding,
yeah, go ahead.
state grants.
Okay.
From my
Yeah, mostly
understanding.
state.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I see a question from Marianne Moore about the 13 communities and why 13 communities and why not more.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
13 comes from, I believe, the number of nodes in the 350 Mass network. So the original intention was that, you know, every node could have a community, though I mean, we would be open to doing more than that. But in terms of defining a goal for the campaign and having it be measurable as a potential option, we selected 13. It could certainly be more communities than that, but
We wanted it to be credible and somewhat related to capacity. basically. And if we can find a way to do 26, we'll do 26.
Yeah, absolutely.
We think this is important work.
It is not necessarily limited to 13 communities.
I see a hand from Susan.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan,
she's
you are
muted.
muted.
Oh,
There we are.
Susan, you're no longer muted, but I can't hear you still. Cannot hear you yet.
I wonder if she can hear us.
We cannot hear you yet.
Yeah.
Susan, can I
that?
call on Stephen? Oh wait, did you say something? Did you hear?
Oh, I turned up my mic. Can you hear
Oh.
me now?
Yeah.
Now we
yes,
can hear
yeah,
you.
we can hear you
Oh,
now.
Yeah.
okay,
Perfect.
good.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
Susan.
All right. Just a quick comment, which is that I understood that the climate leader communities had access to more funds through the Green Community Program, that they were offered or can compete for larger pools of money. That I think is part of the incentive for becoming a climate leader.
Mhm.
So, and I do think it's under the part of the Green Communities Program.
It is, yes. In order to apply for climate leader community status, you have to be a green community as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you have
Thanks,
another
thanks.
question or anything?
Nope, that's it.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
helping. So I see Stephen and then Mark and another hand. So go ahead, Stephen.
Yes, thank you. Yes, regarding the optional stretch code, that does have to be approved by town meeting. You might have to get selectmen or whoever puts it on the town warrants involved.
Yep.
And yes, you are right. You will receive resistance from the construction people. We did it at our town meeting, but our town did pass it very overwhelmingly. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
luck. Good luck.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we were aware of that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Stephen. All right, go ahead, Mark.
So, so there's no statewide legislative or regulatory piece of this, if I understood correctly.
Not inherently tied to it. I think there are elements that would work well with some of the campaigns that are more legislatively, focused, provide a sort of counterbalance to that, but there was no particular legislative push piece that we've identified at this point.
Yeah, I would think that, for example, time of use pricing for electricity or special rates for heat pumps would figure in making this much easier to do, which would also be a strong point of synergy with the Save Money with Clean Heat campaign.
Great. And we'll go to Andy.
Thank you. My question has to do with how time is allocated and how many, let's say 13 is the bottom line target here. How many do we know that are really ready to go, or they're kind of like the low hanging fruit or the second lowest hanging fruit, given that many have already opted? Because my concern is that we could be into a recruitment thing when we really want to be further along than recruitment.
Well, so we have experience from version 1 of the emissions-free buildings campaign that, some nodes have been more active in their local communities than others. And also, so some of them actually are farther along. Also, quite a few of our nodes are multi-town nodes. So they may have within their region towns that have already started to take action, but other towns that haven't done anything yet. So we think that there's plenty of scope for beginning the work in new towns. And we see the art and science of getting towns going from the beginning to be an important thing that we have to get better at.
But I do
Uh,
appreciate that, there will, in the evaluations within nodes and looking at municipalities, there will certainly have to be a consideration for scope and capacity and interest within communities and where people are at.
Great, thanks, Andy. We have
Yeah, thank
just
you.
another minute or so. So if anyone else has a question, you can raise the hand using the reaction feature of Zoom. You can post in the chat, and we'll just hold like one more moment.
a golden moment.
Yeah. All right. So hearing some peaceful silence, maybe I'll say thank you, Marissa and Rand. Anyone can, cheer in the chat or, do some kind of appreciation. Thanks y'all for going first. Thanks y'all for sharing about this campaign. I'm going to unspotlight you.
Thank you
Okay.
all.
Personal. Yeah.
All
So
right.
we will go to our next campaign and back to the screen share. These long slides, by the way, will be available to everyone afterwards. These are not made by the campaigns, but give just a sort of snippet of overview for each. And we'll go to the Building Smarter with Our Tax Dollars campaign. So Nick, take it away.
Sure. So this is actually sort of could be run in tandem a little bit with the last presentation's goals, but ours was more the genesis of it was in some of the work that we've been doing with the schools in the area, getting on the school building committees, and also with some of the affordable and workforce housing that's going on in the area, realizing and seeing that um, the strings attached to the municipal funds, state funds that are being allocated to these projects don't necessarily have a requirement to meet the state's goals for the 2030, 2050 sustainability goals. So we thought that's kind of ludicrous that we're, they're getting state money that taxpayers are funding for this, and there isn't any requirement, or there are minimal requirements. And if you say you can't do it, there's not really any question. So we thought that since the majority of the municipalities rely heavily on state funds, particularly for schools, and right now there's a lot of school building that's going around in this area here and in Pittsfield, for municipal buildings and also for housing. So we thought that there should be some condition for receiving taxpayer dollars, that you have to meet these standards, some sort of standards for meeting the Commonwealth's 2030, 2050 goals for energy independence. And along with that, there has to be some sort of check system that says, you did more than just put in bike, racks. I mean, there has to be something that weights the system. I put in, geothermal. Okay, you get 20 points for that. Something that weights the system so that at the end of the day, the project that tried to do the most, or was able to do the most with the funds that they've put together for these projects to achieve the movement towards meeting these standards, would be awarded the funds, the state funds, to help them move forward with this project. So that's something I'm not sure how you would do that. I do know that, and I did read, at least in the Housing Act, that there are portions of that Housing Act that do have merited goals to achieving sustainability in order to get the funds. So I don't know. I haven't been able to delve into it too much to find out, what that check system is and how arduous it is. But that it exists there. It doesn't seem to exist with the school systems, and I'm not familiar with too many municipal buildings that are being built other than schools right now. So, but I know with the schools around here, it's kind of the attitude has been, well, it's not an established technology. There's no proof it saves money. We don't want to do it that way. It's sort of like this weird conglomeration of stupid excuses. So, and it gets them off the hook half the time. So we're feeling that that there needs to be a legislative something that we need to have in legislation that makes this a requirement in order to get the state funds. So we're hoping that let me just go back to my notes a little bit. So the targets for this is obviously it's going to be the executive branch, you know, and the mayor's office and the Office of Energy and Environment, and also the legislators. You know, we have to get the information to them, not just about what the methods are for achieving the goals, but the fact that these methods are economically feasible now. No, that's the missing information that I think a lot of people have, and a number of people, and I think also with thank you, also with people within with the 350, the major organization as well as our node have a lot of information that could provide that could that could sort of diffuse that argument for people that it's not affordable, it's not knowledge, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the expertise. There's so many projects out there. So I'm gonna take 5 and see if there are other questions. Looks like Monte Pearson has a question.
Hi. I know what you're talking about. We have school building projects going on in Burlington that, you know, this is one of the things that happens is that can you do it? Can you not do it? That kind of stuff. What my question is kind of more process thing is that if this would be to require the legislature to do something, if we were to adopt this, would we have to bring it to Mass Power Forward and have it go through the Mass Power Forward process? Or could we adopt it ourselves for the legislative committee and not have to worry about whether Mass Power Forward is on board?
Well, I think you'd want them on board. I think there are a little bit of flux right now, as I understand it anyway, as to whether where jurisdiction they're going to fall under. Who's going to be controlling them. But we feel that in our discussions with our senator and representative here that they are on board with sponsoring something like this. That this is something they feel. I mean, it's a no-brainer for them. They want their constituents to say, yeah, he's fighting for our funds to be used judiciously. You know, so I think that we feel that that's. I'm not sure about Mass Power. I'd have to. I mean, I'd have to look into that a little bit more. So
There's something in the what is that called over there?
the
The
chat.
chat.
The chat. Yeah, right. The chat. There's an answer in the chat. Dan Zakin just said that we do legislation outside of our Mass Power Forward coalition. So we could do it either way.
Yeah, it's a yes and situation. Yes, we can do it, and we can do it with Mass Power Forward as well. Thank you, Dan, for your help in the chat. And so we'll go John and then Carolyn.
So, Nick, is there legislation already that we would want to get behind, or do we have to write some because it's kind of late for that?
There was legislation that addressed part of this with Senator Mark last term, and it did not get to, you know, stand on its own 2 feet. I think we talked to him about it a little bit, and I think that's why he would be interested in pursuing this further right now. I think there's some groundwork there. I'm not sure how much because I didn't really get a chance to discuss it with him at the end there, but I think that he feels that there's, you know, at least a jumping off point at this point. So
Just one quick follow-up. If there wasn't viable legislation, how do you envision the campaign?
I think I see it as having to get out a lot more information about why it's achievable. I think that's the biggest tripping hazard here is people just they hear that we can't do it, and the contractors don't want to do it, and nobody wants to do it. In reality, it's just they're stuck in their own profit motives to begin with. And so I think we just have to provide information to them that makes them feel more comfortable about taking on these projects and and taking on these technologies in order to get the funds that they need to make these projects work.
I will add, just because Nick, I found this really compelling in the write-up, is because we already have emissions expectations for Massachusetts by 2050. Some of this could be done just by going to more Healy and thinking more on the regulation side.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there's a few sort of levers we can pull.
I think one thing to keep in mind is a lot of these, particularly school projects, we're renovating schools now that have been sitting there for 50 years already. So whatever we do today is going to be sitting there in 50 years. And if it isn't responsive to the energy reduction and energy and sustainability needs that we have, it's going to be, horrific for, achieving them. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. What I'm going to do is share my screen again, not to interrupt anything. There was just a request in the chat to see the slide that overviews this. So I'm going to share my screen, but Carolyn, feel free to ask your question. Don't mind me if you are not hoping to see the screen share. So go ahead, Carolyn.
I had to then find my little square to unmute. Have you approached any energy services companies about this effort? Are you familiar with what they are?
Are you talking about Mass Save?
No, we in Ipswich used an energy services company. We've for over a year been negotiating with them. We had a proposal. Essentially, they went through all of our public buildings, evaluated them for energy, the most cost-effective energy saving, came up with a set of improvements that would almost pay for themselves. And so that's what they do. They look at municipal buildings and come up with, methods for saving money. We had a great process supported unanimously by the select board, school committee, whatever. And because of our local way that we approve or disapprove things, we passed it 2/3 of town meeting, which was required. Great. It failed at the ballot, which was really disappointing. But it's I'd be happy to share the report that they did for us and their approach with you if you're interested.
Sure. Did you get any feedback as to why it failed at the ballot?
Nobody knew what the hell they were voting on. I think they
Okay,
were
so
totally perplexed by the fact that it was a state national ballot. And the fact that there was a question 6, everybody else got 5 questions. We had question 6. And it
6,
was too
okay.
confusing.
No, I think I've seen those types of firms used in the preliminary phases of projects. And sometimes what we've seen in the school projects is they discount a lot of directions because I'm not sure what their motivations are, but at least on tape, they're saying it's because the methodologies aren't tested, the methodologies aren't viable, and the costs are going to be too extreme to adopt them. Well, there's no backup to that though.
Yeah.
And so I do have a little bit of because I'm an architect and I work in this business for 40 years now, that I have a little there's a lot of resistance to doing things that aren't business as usual, because you're used to just doing things a certain way. And so we would like to infuse that with a different thought process right now. That's all.
Good.
Yeah. In the interest of time, we'll do one more question. We have about a minute left. So go ahead, Marissa, and this will be the last question for this one.
There you are.
Sorry, there we go. I made some things disappear for all of you guys somehow by accident. I just was wondering, I know a lot of budgeting options come through the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and I know that they do have like a point system for sort of green or for their when they give funding. I wonder if it seems like it maybe isn't enough to sway the scales. I was wondering if you considered that as a potential lever of like petitioning to have that, weight higher in
Yes.
the option. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was looking at their site and it's I think it says sustainability in the banner, building for better schools, blah, and sustainability, something. So but I didn't see it as throughout the whole, whatever they had online. I read through it. I didn't see the point system, but there must be something there. But I don't think it's weighted very heavily, and I certainly don't see it being animated in the school processes that are going on here.
I'm gonna pause us here. I do see, Mark, your hand. What we'll do is feel free to continue to ask questions in the chat. People can respond to one another, but in the interest of time, want to go to our next campaign. So thank you, Nick. Once again, feel free to share some warm thoughts in the chat, or whatever. Thank you for pitching this campaign. Gonna go back to the screen share, and we're going to save money with clean heat. Y'all might notice the trend. These first 3 campaigns have some focus on building emissions, housing, but operate on a few different targets with different campaign goals. So with this one, I'll turn it over to David Green and Mark Diane.
Am I unmuted?
You are indeed.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen, and Mark's going to introduce this. I'll say a couple of things, and then Mark will finish. Give me just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning there, David.
Hang on. I need to share. Can you see the first slide?
Yeah, but it's not in presentation mode.
How about that?
Here we are. That's better.
Okay, Mark, why don't you take it, and I'll just take over when you
Stop.
see me.
So the objective here of the campaign is to kind of continue the momentum that was developed in our campaign and in the sort of broader campaign around the future of clean heat over the last session, to move the Commonwealth towards a policy environment where very large numbers of people will be able to decarbonize their homes and go electric, and decarbonize their buildings, and do so while saving money. And if the next slide could come up, please.
Yeah, hang on.
So in our view, there are 4 key elements to this, some of which would be enhanced with state legislation, and some of which would be enhanced in another way that we'll talk about later. The first thing is an issue that this organization raised last year in enhancing what Mass Save does to increase the scale of the operation, to provide full treatment package with heat pumps, solar, storage, insulation, and peak shaving. And on that bill, we have text of the bill. We have preliminary agreement from Senator Cream, who introduced it last time, to introduce it again. We have to deal with electric rate reform. The biggest barrier, other than that it's a lot of work to electrify your home, is that right now for gas customers, switching to electric heat pumps tends to raise their cost of energy, which is a huge barrier to getting people to do it, even if you incentivize the heat pumps, which we now do. So we're going to have to work on electric rate reform in a way that is not a subsidy, but takes costs out of the electric system and takes benefit from the time of use tariffs that are coming in, and shows people a discount for heat pumps, and while we're at it, for electric vehicle charging, to clean the grid and cut costs. I don't think we can add more incentives to the Mass Save funding system, but we're going to have to use what we've got and what is available through the IRA funding, and to add low-cost financing so that people can borrow money to do these projects, which are substantial. And finally, in keeping with what the last 2 speakers talked about, we think we have to give cities and towns more power to move ahead with electrification and decarbonization of their communities through solar and through network geothermal and through some other means that the cities and towns don't have a lot of power to work on now, but should. And that would be, in my view anyway, a 4th piece of legislation, or a 4th section of a omnibus bill. Next slide. So the advantage from our point of view on this program is that it has a bold goal with kind of sweeping impacts projected. It has both big ideas at the state level, and it works well with the local campaigns that have been described and a few that we want to add to the list. It builds on the coalition that worked quite well in the last legislative session, Gas Transition Allies, where I have some direct role, Mothers Out Front, Mass Power Forward, Sierra Club, Elders Climate Action. And it also opens up the possibility of allying with organizations that we don't normally ally with. The Heat Smart network of heat pump consultants, solar installers, and there are technology groups that are working on peak shaving, plus there's our own allies in Fix the Grid that we can work with. That's my part.
Okay, it's just in graphics. I mean, Mark really talked about all these pieces, so I'm wary of time. I'm not going to go through all the details. But basically, to get a house to net zero and to save $2,500 a year, you have to do four things. One, heat with electricity using an efficient heat pump. Two, solar panels on the roof to provide cheap electricity to power that heat pump and everything else. The pink box here is the thick insulation that keeps the heat in the wintertime, keeps the heat out in the summertime, and then maintaining the gas connection, at least temporarily, so we get through this transition period to get to net zero by 2050. I'll say one more thing, hand it back to Mark. This is all the details. We can go through this if anyone's got any questions on this. There are a lot of details to make these four bits fit together, but we've spent a lot of time analyzing this, and we're very confident these bits do fit together and do get us to 2 million houses in Massachusetts to net zero by 2050. Mark, back to you.
Okay, now, how much time do I have left, Evan?
You have 4 seconds, so I'll allow you all to finish this up, but I'm going to try to keep us on time for the
I'm sorry
Q&A.
about that.
You got a lot of information.
I see this. We see this as something where there's a statewide campaign rooted in local node activity. I support what was said on school and building decarbonization as a measure. I support what was said initially about upgrading the community participation in the green in a green community basis. But I also think that we can see for some places, community aggregation of power, community network geothermal pilots, stretch code adoption, as was said before. All these campaigns are easy access campaigns for local people that provide the political base for the kind of reforms that we've talked about at a state level. And now I will stop.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
All right, looks like we got a couple hands. So why don't we start with Bob?
Yeah, I think we need to be careful of one thing in this. When we talk about the subsidies, I would like to see some kind of means testing so that priority is given to people who are lower on the income scale rather than subsidy. The population that has this equipment now is mostly fairly prosperous.
Right.
And in addition, question about, the related question about renters.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't address that because it is so heavily addressed in the current Mass Save plan. I mean, I agree with you about the outcome, but what they've done is they've added a whole new tier of income-based incentives at 100% incentive, and they've got a whole landlord tenant outreach program, which I'm not sure it'll work. It hasn't started yet, but it's sort of stepping heavily in that direction. And I guess what I would say about that is, yeah, let's keep doing that, but add this other stuff to it. Anyway, I can go into more detail if we need to, but that's why it's not there.
Let me just add to that. In addition to the new Mass Save plan, which is heavily targeted towards lower income, the federal IRA subsidies are also heavily targeted to lower incomes. You put the two together, which is a big part of what we're recommending here. Stick the two together, add the subsidies up, and what you end up with is a very large focus on low income communities.
Right.
Great, glad to hear it.
All right, we'll go to Sarah Lyons next.
There's also a really good question in the chat, by the way. I guess my only question is, as you know, David, when you presented this to us, I was really excited about it, but how much does the election screw up the income stream or threaten the income stream?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly a hostile administration to what the IRA bill was going to do. A lot of the money has been allocated already, and it's rather hard for the feds to get it back. I guess our planning assumption here is that's the last federal money we're going to see until we elect AOC president in 2028. But that's just a I'm sorry, personal plug there. But but anyway, that's the assumption here, which we've
So
got.
I agree with what Mark
It's
said.
allocated. We've got state money, and we've got plans to get more state money.
Yeah, there's another piece of it too, which is the IRA falls into three buckets. The first part is all tax credits, and those are administered by the IRS. They've been in place for a long time, for decades. They became enhanced with the IRA, but it was nothing new. They just added more money to it. But it's all tax credits, and Republicans generally are pretty much in favor of tax credits. They're not in favor of government spending, but as Mark said, the spending has been done. It's with the states in their bank accounts now, so it's very hard to pull it back. But I do believe the IRS parts, because it's a tax credit, not a government check, I actually think that will survive, even under the Trump administration.
But again, we'll see. This plan it relies the big bucks are state bucks in this plan.
And spending money on natural gas and heating oil, which is a lot of money and creates a lot of cash in the project to fund the other things like the heat pumps and the insulation and the solar panels.
Thanks, y'all. I am going to go to the chat, and thanks folks for raising hands, asking in chat, giving us an array of ways to engage. There's two sort of long questions. I'll ask maybe the first, but would invite Mark and David to read it through as well. Is the goal for new legislation to literally require or mandate heat pump installation whenever existing whole house air conditioning is replaced? And y'all can see the rest of the question.
Yeah, I think that'll be a controversial piece. We don't have a sponsor for that, but yes, the objective there is we got like 35% or so of the population have central air now, and there are incentives for replacing it with a heat pump, and you could do essentially an equipment requirement that the heat pump be both ways that you put in. But the disadvantage of that is it's requiring people to do something, and people don't like that. The great advantage of it is it's extremely low cost way to get over the next 15 years all of the people who've got central air to have heat pumps. So I think that's as I look through our long list, that's one of the more controversial pieces. Not controversial with me particularly, but controversial with the legislature, and we may not get it. But that's why it's there.
Yeah, the reality today is that because of the mass save incentives for heat pumps and the federal IRA incentives for heat pumps, it is cheaper today in Massachusetts to install a new heat pump than it is to install a new air conditioning unit. And that's why I think this is not a heavy lift. Even if you compel it, in fact, you're compelling people to save money.
Yeah,
it's not that
it's there. We won't get everything, but I think that's worth sort of having the discussion.
Worth fighting for. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. And this second question in this is also interesting, and maybe just briefly, can you speak to how saving money with clean heat is sort of different from the Future of Clean Heat bill, which we supported last session?
Right. Yes. I mean, it is different. There will be a Future of Clean Heat 2, Son of Future of Clean Heat, which I think we ought to support, partly because I'm working on it. But it's not ready yet. So this is I think of these as the companion pieces to the Future of Clean Heat approach that make Future of Clean Heat more viable and work well. In particular, I mean, we had the mass save enhancement piece, the more comprehensive audit, as a companion piece from our point of view to Future of Clean Heat last year. I think that remains. And then I will emphasize the electric rate side of things, we are pushing uphill as long as many people will face a higher total fuel burden if they do what we say, which is switch to heat pumps. And so we've got to incorporate solar into the proposals, which is not a future of clean heat measure. And we've also got to go after electric rates themselves.
Thanks, y'all. So we have about 2 minutes left. We have more hands than we have time for, but maybe I'll turn it over to Steve Wenner just to hear a voice we haven't heard yet today. Steve, go ahead.
Hi, I've heard that there might be a change in governance of Mass Save. Is this important for the success of this campaign?
It's a piece of it's one of the things we think ought to be supported and elucidated. There's a proposal. Nothing's going to change. Very unlikely to be any change in management of Mass Save over the next 3 years. The proposal that has just come out in the past, I don't know, 10 days or so, is for a 2028 change in governance. And I think as we do this campaign, we have to take that into account, but we didn't put it on this list because frankly, it hadn't emerged in time to get on the list. I mean, it's on the list as one line in David's extremely detailed slides. You see, it says change the governance of Mass Save, but that's the timing of it. The proposal's out there now. It proposes a change in governance for 2028. And I think we have to sort of think through and figure out exactly what we want about that. This campaign would give us a foot in that discussion that where we would carry some weight, but we don't have to organize around it, at least at the moment.
Yeah, and just so you know, I recently testified at the hearings on the Mass Save reform in favor of moving Mass Save from utility control to state control.
Right.
All right, Sean. Well, thank you. This is the time we have for this session. And I know there's more hands up, and there's in fact other questions in chat, including a question about the R factor of the current refrigerants and heat pumps. And there's probably a lot of other questions. And maybe we'll just, first of all, say thank you everyone for asking questions, especially clarifying ones. These are really helpful to help everyone understand, these proposals. And also shout out both David and Mark for being like extremely thoughtful in both drafting the proposal and in helping people understand it. There's a lot of technical things, political things here, and you both do a great job of explaining them. So thank you in advance for maybe having to field some questions afterwards or in the chat.
No
and
problem.
Thank you for your presentation.
No problem.
All right, I'm going to unspotlight, and then we'll go to our next presentation. And y'all keep going in the chat. I appreciate all the information we're sharing with one another. So we're leaving buildings behind for a little bit. We're going to go to the No on Hydrogen campaign, which is proposed by Susan Purser, the Berkshire node. So I'm going to stop sharing and find Susan and let you take it away. Okay.
Okay, oh, there we go. Okay.
All right.
Good
You're
evening.
on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
am
I was just saying you're on.
Okay. Yes, my name's Susan Purser with the Berkshire 350 node. We have two campaign proposals tonight, so this is our second one. Nick had proposed the first one. So the other campaign we're proposing is no hydrogen. We at the Berkshire node are proposing the no hydrogen campaign that would provide information and possibly sponsor a bill that would inform legislators and the public of the dangers and misinformation around hydrogen and limit the ways that it can be used. Now that the climate bill is passed with a number of encouraging amendments in it, we need to look at what climate areas still need to be addressed. And I believe hydrogen is one of them. As we know, hydrogen is being promoted as a false green energy source by the fossil fuel industry as a way to extend the natural gas's usage. It's being proposed for use in a number of areas, including residential heating and cooking, in pipelines, and in transportation. As the new administration, the new federal administration seems bent on expanding drilling, I suspect that hydrogen, which is made from methane, will be promoted more in the coming years. Although hydrogen is not a direct greenhouse gas, it is mainly derived from methane, so it continues the reliance on carbon-based sources. Producing hydrogen is extremely costly and energy intensive. In addition, it's very corrosive to natural gas pipelines, and so new pipelines will need to be constructed at great expense to ratepayers. Our existing natural gas pipeline network should be preserved for use as geothermal heating systems and should not be allowed to be corroded by carrying hydrogen. Hydrogen should not be used for homes as it's highly flammable and produces high levels of noxious gases. In addition, kitchen appliances will have to be replaced in order to run on hydrogen, which will be expensive for homeowners. Buses that run on hydrogen are much more expensive to buy, require more maintenance, and use a fuel that is much more energy intensive than electric battery buses. When it comes down to it, we just don't have time for hydrogen and the other false climate solutions that will do nothing but keep the fossil fuel industry in business. Although I've been told by the director of the Mass DPU that no hydrogen is being used in our pipelines now, I think it's important to stop its potential use before it gets started. The Biden administration has already allocated money for 7 hydrogen hubs across the country, as you may know, which will expedite the infrastructure for hydrogen. I think the time is right to launch an information campaign about hydrogen that informs legislators and the public about its dangers. By using letters, brochures, rallies, meetings with the public and legislators, we can get the word out and avoid missteps. Local nodes can also monitor their local transit authorities to be sure that they are not considering buying hydrogen buses. And we also, our node has already put out a hydrogen brochure that we've sent to all the legislators. Sorry, it's backwards. We made this nice brochure and we sent it to all the legislators at the State House. So we've sort of got the ball rolling a little bit. So we do have this beautiful brochure, Stop Burning Things, that we can use. So I believe that this campaign is very winnable once the public and lawmakers understand that the infrastructure for hydrogen will be very expensive to ratepayers and the state, and it is dangerous for use in the home and destructive for the atmosphere. A successful campaign will save a lot of time and money that may mistakenly be sunk into building infrastructure for hydrogen and purchasing appliances when there are cheaper, more efficient, and cleaner solutions for the environment. Thank you for your support.
Hey, once again, perfect timing. Thank you, Susan. And looks like we already have a couple questions in the chat, but would also invite folks to raise their hands. Also, if you already wrote in the chat and your question was not answered, there's a little backlog, so feel free to raise your hand and read what's in the chat. Yeah, Paul, start us off.
Yeah, this may overlap with Demi's question in the chat. So I get it that blending hydrogen with natural gas and piping it to homes to be as use a heat source is a terrible idea. Or let alone pure hydrogen to homes. I think I heard you mention hydrogen buses. Why shouldn't we use hydrogen for some places where you need concentrated energy? Period. It seems like there's probably a place for hydrogen somewhere in our economy rather than nowhere. But what do you think?
Well, I understand that it's useful for heavy industry, steel industry, and some other industries, perhaps for heavy trucking, perhaps in the future for the airline industry, for industries that it's difficult to electrify. But in terms of buses, I've read a couple of articles that where in Europe they have adopted hydrogen buses and found that they're very expensive to buy, that they're hard to maintain. And basically the article I read said that they basically switched over to electric buses within 4 or 5 years because the hydrogen buses were just not reliable enough for public use, since they had a lot of problems, mechanical problems. Why, I don't know. I know here in Berkshire County, I've heard the rumor that someone in the Berkshire transit system is considering buying hydrogen buses. So we are trying to communicate with them about how electric buses may be cheaper and more reliable to run.
I'll go to Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I have read that burning hydrogen, although it doesn't produce carbon dioxide gas, it produces nitrous oxide, which is a strong greenhouse gas.
Yeah. Apparently, it's not totally correct, I guess, to say that it's a greenhouse gas, since it's sort of indirect. So I sort of skirted that a bit. But yeah, it's certainly not good for the environment, particularly since you're deriving it from methane, which is obviously a very toxic greenhouse gas.
Seeing a lot of thoughtful comments in the chat, but if people have questions, please pull them out. Help me see some of the questions. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Hey, Susan. So one thing that you had talked about also before was with the hydrogen use is the with vehicles and in general, you're creating hydrogen using electricity generally. Is that correct?
I'm not sure, but I know it's very energy intensive.
Right, but I think they're
Much more
proposing,
so.
the reason they're calling it green is they're saying they would use green electricity to create hydrogen. But from what I understand, that there's so much electricity needed to do that. Like you said, it's incredibly intensive. It's more efficient to use that same green energy to heat homes.
Right. Yeah. You're basically using more energy to produce it than it will then in turn produce. So, it's kind of like shale oil, it takes whatever it takes, 2 barrels to get it out of the ground for the 1 barrel of energy that's left. So it's sort of the same argument.
I'm going to go to Demi's question in the chat and then to Mark. And you may have addressed this slightly, but would love to hear again. Would we support use of hydrogen in appropriate industrial on-site uses?
Well, I understand that there's ways to, to use it for industries that can't be electrified. But again, you do have the problem of bringing it to the site. Perhaps you have a small amount of pipeline that is dedicated to bringing hydrogen, but you can't mix it into the natural gas pipeline at more than like 5%, 10%, because it will corrode the pipes. And a lot of that system is already has a lot of leaks and is aged. So, I mean, perhaps if there's industrially, if there's a way to use it, but you'd want to be able to bring it in on its own pipeline, I would think.
All right, and we'll go, I see Mark, Peter, and then John. We might have enough time for all of you. So go ahead, Mark.
Well, I mean, I would recommend framing it exactly the way you just did, which is banning the insertion of hydrogen into the general gas pipeline system, leaving open specialized industrial uses and some other things which are pretty minor. And the big issue is once you put it in the pipes, it's in all the pipes. You can't say, oh, we're going to tell the hydrogen to go only to, Joe's helicopter powered by hydrogen farm. Once it's in the pipes, it goes into your basement. It goes through the 100-year-old cast iron pipes that'll rot in a second. All that stuff. Anyway, but if you frame it that way, I think you got a good chance of winning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Peter.
No arguments about the technology and all that, but how do you see this engaging people in the nodes, mobilizing our constituents, adding people? Is it all an education campaign, or what are people going to do to get excited to work on this?
Well, it seemed to me it was sort of along the same line of that some of the bills that we've been backing as as a statewide group. There's basically you're taking a concept and you're contacting legislators, sending them information, meeting with them, talking with them. You could have meetings at town halls to get information out. You can hand out leaflets. I mean, I agree, it's not really a sexy topic as such. I agree. I mean, it's pretty dry, but I think that if we allow our state to go down that road, there's just going to be a lot of money thrown at it, and we're going to end up realizing that this is not the way to go. So I realize it's not a sexy kind of campaign, but I'm just a little afraid of these hydrogen hubs that they're going to start really pushing this down, pushing it down our throats. But I don't know. The DPU director told me that there's no hydrogen in the pipeline at the moment. So if we can kind of hold that off, then that's good. But I don't know. I just see the new administration coming in, and the whole drill, baby drill. It's just horrible, and I can see this being really pushed. But yeah, I agree. We'd have to really think about how to get the public and the nodes involved in it.
Yeah, it's funny, just looking in the chat, there's a handful of folks, there's Bruce and Ann, other folks who've had something to say about like, oh, something about that's interesting. So yeah, I think finding the sexy framing, something we can do. And we have 1 minute left. So John, I'll let you have the last question.
Is there relevant legislation being filed on this?
Well, I saw that there may have been some reference to it in the Future of Clean Heat bill, perhaps, which was H3203 or S2105, that would prevent the gas utilities from putting hydrogen into the natural gas distribution system. So it has been put out there, I think.
Yeah, the language is available. If we want to do it, I can certainly get you that pretty quickly.
Who said that? I'm sorry.
Mark Diane. I mean,
Mark. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the future of clean heat has, the original bill has a section which bans hydrogen and renewable, what they so call renewable natural gas in the pipelines. It's not brilliant legal language, but it will do for this purpose if you need it.
So do you think the topic has been, you know, that that people are familiar with it to some degree, or that it's been
Well,
covered?
The DPU and the governor are familiar with it, for
Mhm.
sure, right? You know, what they say is, we're not going to do it, don't worry about it, which makes me worry,
Right,
being cynical.
yeah.
I'm going to pause us there on a joyful note of cynicism. Thank you, Susan, for pitching this campaign, and yeah, continuing to see interesting reflections and additions in the chat. So thanks everyone for having things to say about it. I'm going
Thank
to
you.
go next. Oh yeah, let me like take a breath. Susan, thank you. Everyone can share some warmth in the chat or their hands, however you feel fit. All right. So we're going to go to Paul Shorb and the Stop Private Jets campaign. I'm going to share my screen, but it's going to be Paul's slideshow. So maybe I will spotlight you now, Paul, and then share my screen for you. And you let me
Thank you.
know when you want to advance screens and everything.
Okay.
All right, get ready. All right, you're on.
All right. So the photo here illustrates what a lot of you know, which is the Stop Private Jet Expansion at Handsome or Anywhere campaign is already a campaign. It's already going on. 350 Mass has endorsed it. Some 350 Mass nodes and other people are active in it. You can see Sabine, of course, the polar bear, and me holding up the sign, and on the far side, Alex Chatfield, who made that awesome sign. Welcome to Passport. Enjoy your view of the dying Earth from your private jet. So this was outside one of the public hearings held by the Massport board. Massport is officially the decision-making body who was approving this potential project. If you go to the next slide, I'll just revisit some of the basics. The goal of this project was to stop this proposed expansion because we opponents believe it would lead to a great increase in private jet traffic, which you probably know is the second most wasteful form of travel outside of personal spaceship. And it was a ton of carbon that would be released if you had 6,000 more flights per year. Whether to increase flights or not is the big debate. We're pretty sure we're right that it would, like, duh, why are you building more hangars for private jets? So it'd be a big impact if we win. The Massport board is the official decision maker to approve this project. They may not be very susceptible to public pressure. So the primary target really would be the Healy administration. Although they're not the boss of the Massport board, they do enforce the environmental study process. And they've put a big hitch in their get along already by rejecting the draft environmental impact report submitted. When the supplemental comes out, will the public have a chance to comment on that? And that's one of the official ways to try to slow this project down and maybe eventually bleed it to death. The legislature is not a target, but they did help a little bit by recently amending Massport's charter, some of you may know, to require considering climate when Massport makes decisions. Doesn't necessarily kill this project, though. Next slide, please. So I mentioned some of these points already. As you may know, there's been 2 actions on the site already with nonviolent civil disobedience, Extinction Rebellion recently, and Scientist Rebellion previously. But a lot of other non-civil disobedience actions, standouts on Route 2, a protest outside the office building on the main funders, etc. So a kind of good news is that there's already staff support, which is pretty good. Save Our Heritage is a kind of a, sorry, Save Our Heritage is a somewhat traditionally NIMBY-ish group, but this is not a NIMBY campaign. And so there actually is pretty good staff support for this. They funded a really strong quantitative study of flight numbers, which really influenced the administration so far, led to them rejecting that EIR. Next slide, please. So some considerations regarding choosing this campaign. In some ways, it seems like the kind of perfect campaign for us, but there is one thing that might point you in the direction. Why is it so great? There's a decent chance of success. We don't really know for sure where the administration's head is at, Healy and Tepper and Hoffer, but there's a good chance they really want to stop it, but they don't want to say it because it'll actually prejudice them if they say it. Hard to know for sure. It's a really big deal if we stop it. It's a frickin' carbon bomb. It's part of an international effort to push back against the fast growing use of private jets. The top 1% just keeps getting worse and worse in their behavior. People seem to really get it when you describe this project. Like if I'm tabling and say, do you own a private jet? You fly on private jets much? People say, no. Well, then you want to sign this petition.
30 seconds left.
Thank you. So you say 3 or 30?
30.
Okay. As I say, it's not an NIMBY campaign. Question mark, we wouldn't own it. Like there's already a group, we'd be part of the decision-making process. We already are. So, there's some pros and cons there. Of course, if it wasn't a priority campaign, meaning all nodes expected to participate, it could be a non-priority, meaning nodes are encouraged to opt in, which is kind of where we are now, but more officially. Thank you. Ready for questions.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Would you like to keep these up or would you like to go to gallery view?
I don't think we need them. Thank you.
Okay. If anyone asking questions would like to refer to a slide, I'm happy to pull it back up. But yeah, I'm going to go to Larry first. We haven't heard from Larry tonight.
Yay.
Are we aware of what's happening in Plymouth? Because there's a fight going on there against the expansion of that airport. Does that fit in with this campaign?
It does potentially fit in to the broader campaign. The way I'm proposing it as a 350 mass campaign, I intentionally limited it to the Hanscom campaign, just to make it definable. But it has the potential to be evergreen and multi-site. I'm basically proposing that, for that matter, yeah. I don't know enough about the Plymouth issue and how much is it private jets versus commercial jets. But yes, this definitely goes potentially beyond Hanscom.
They're trying to get their environmental study thrown out and redone too, so they're following a similar path. Thank you.
All right. We'll go to Sarah Lyons.
Hey, right at the end, you talked about how it's an existing campaign somewhere else and can you just elaborate a little bit on how we
definitely
fit into that? That would be great. Thanks.
Definitely. The people at Save Our Heritage who are been sort of defending the Minuteman National Park for decades, including from attempts by FedEx and UPS to move into Hanscom Civil Airfield, et cetera, which is kind of NIMBY-ish, right? Don't want the local pollution hurting the neighbors and the park and all that stuff. They sort of were the crystallization point that drew in a bunch of other groups and the initial organization meeting, which some people on this call were at, I think, and people still very actively participating include, besides some of us nodes, Sierra Club, Elders Climate Action, several chapters from others out front. I'm forgetting a few, and the Extinction Rebellion is not really so much in the campaign, but as a parallel campaign to stop with a more aggressive demand, and they've overlapped. So the existing campaign now has weekly meetings, people who want to participate can be in them and help, direct it.
All right, thanks, Paul. We'll go to Steve Brody.
Yes, thank you. In regard to the other comments regarding Plymouth, I've heard that the Plymouth neighbors and many people really want to stop that Plymouth expansion of the Plymouth airport for many reasons. And my suggestion is that maybe you should try to contact the people involved in that Plymouth Airport resistance, that they might add strength, a lot of strength to your campaign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can go to Sabina next.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. As you know, I was reading through it when you were working on it, and as I'm listening to you now, I remember that when we drafted the campaign for SPJE, the one thing that I was unhappy with was that they said stop private jet expansion as opposed to stop private jets, right? I think as the climate movement, we want to stop private jets. And I think when Extinction Rebellion did the arrestable action at Hanscom, they actually had a banner that said something like stop private jets. They did not say stop private jet expansion. So, I mean, I don't know if you're amenable to, because I mean, it was a very strategic decision by the campaign to choose this lingo, right? To say stop private jet expansion, because it was not gonna actually get into the debate on whether or not we should reduce private jet use. It was just about not growing it. And I feel like as a climate movement, they're not the climate movement. The people who started this campaign, as you say, are not primarily motivated by climate, but we are. So I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, can I offer a quick direct response?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a possible campaign. It would have very different targets, right? An advantage of this campaign is the target is crisp and clear. You know, it's Massport and the executive branch that can influence it, and we know what a win would be. Stop private jets completely. I haven't thought through what that campaign would be. It seems like it's more as a public awareness campaign. I'm not quite sure who the relevant decision makers would be. It might be the FAA. I don't know. It would just require a lot more thought. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying I haven't fleshed it out. I don't know what it would be. I would also support such a campaign. I just don't know how it would work.
I want to go to a question in the chat just because it adds a little bit to what we were talking about before. So Bob Tomposki asks, how many private jets land at Logan Airport each year? Which is both a very factual question, but also brings in Logan Airport, which is in East Boston environmental justice community. So I know that's been a part of the campaign discussion so far too.
Yeah. So one, I don't know how many. Two, the expansion of private jets is not going to happen there. It's the reason they want to build out here is there's more demand, and I think Logan may be at capacity. One reason that's out here is that's where where rich people live, and they don't want to have to go into Logan. So more convenience equals more trips is part of our theory. This campaign, even though it's sort of the traditionally NIMBY Save Our Heritage, for this campaign, they're very consciously avoiding NIMBYism and very explicitly collaborating with Logan neighbors and trying to support them in their parallel fights.
Awesome. We have time for, I think, just the two more questions. So we'll go Bruce and then Andy. So Bruce, go ahead.
Yes, Paul, the reason I have a sign in front of my house for SPJE, one of the most important things on that sign is the phrase "or anywhere."
Right.
Or anywhere. So this is a global campaign. That means I don't want them in Japan. I don't want private jets in China. I don't want private jets in Saudi Arabia. I don't want them anywhere. So this has to do with equity.
Right.
And the letter that I sent in about this came down heavy on the pole of equity, fairness. It is absolutely inequitable and unfair to allow the wealthiest people in any society to poison the atmosphere. I'm ranting, but I'll do my rant anyway. It's unfair. So
No, I totally, and
I don't know about NIMBYism, but it's just unfair.
no, you're totally right. And one thing that's kind of neat about this is it's just the extreme example of everything about climate change.
Here, here.
All right, we have 1 minute left, so we'll go Andy, and then we'll close this section. Let's go ahead, Andy.
Sure. Paul, I think Bruce actually identified something here that might partially answer my question. But what nodes that are not right in the Boston area that have other things on their minds, why might they want to sign on to this at this point?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, I mean, the first point, which is probably obvious, is that it's not NIMBY, it's the world's climate, right? So it affects everybody, right? But you don't have to, go to Hanscom for all of the work, right? There have been local protests, right? But there's lots more that doesn't have to be local. For example, getting more municipalities to pass resolutions saying this is a terrible idea, for climate reasons, not because they're flying over my head reasons. That's one example.
Oh, I might have heard the buzzer. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. There's several questions and ideas in the chat once again, so folks can feel free to comment, reply, keep the conversation going there. If you're watching on video, we are recording, so everyone here continue to be on your best behavior, but I can save the chat and make sure folks can have access to that as well. So thank you, Paul. Thank you for presenting this campaign. So we're going to go to our final campaign. Last one, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us so far. And this is for the Make Polluters Pay campaign. I'm going to share my screen and then pass it over to Connie and Dan. So, in the wrong campaign. All right, Make Polluters Pay. Some of y'all know Climate Super Fund. Go ahead, Connie and Dan, and let me know if you want me to take this down.
Yeah, Evan, I'd actually love to just have it pinned on Connie and myself if possible.
Perfect.
And I'll hand it off to Connie to start.
Thanks. Make Polluters Pay is a necessary, just, and urgent campaign. We must hold the major fossil fuel companies accountable for the damage they have caused as they pursued profits over stewardship. We must hold them accountable to provide the funds necessary for robust and resilient regional responses to hurricanes, floods, and fires caused by climate change. We must hold them accountable for the environmental injustices done to marginalized, overburdened communities. Let's build upon our work and learnings from this past session and continue to build our base. Make Polluters Pay is a strategic and winnable campaign. Communities will be able to envision how they will thrive in spite of future threats. Together, we will mobilize a broad coalition of labor, public health advocates, youth, and others. Let's persist in changing the status quo that requires only taxpayers to pay for adaptive projects. Clearly, the next federal administration will not promote any national legislation of this kind. Instead, state legislation is a powerful pathway for success. Vermont has already been the first state to successfully enact the Climate Superfund law. Thank you, neighbor. California and Maryland have pending legislation, and as you might know, a bill is currently on the desk of the governor of New York. Massachusetts is poised to be one of the first states to pass this bill this session. We will focus relentlessly on the responsibility of all legislators and leadership in particular to move this campaign forward with the capacity and the passion of 350 Mass members and better future project staff, we can inform and activate a growing network and implement our strategic plans in sustained, creative, and powerful ways. The fossil fuel industry must pay its fair share. We need and deserve a climate superfund. The future demands it. Dan, add on to that, please.
Thank you so much, Connie, for that powerful opening. For anyone who was not here the first time around, we are looking to pass a climate superfund that will make the biggest oil and gas companies pay for climate adaptation and resilience, which is what keeps our communities safe from the impacts of climate crisis, from the fires that are currently burning in the Berkshires to the flooding and air quality issues that we've seen over the past year. We are looking to expand this campaign beyond a typical legislative campaign. So we are applying for coalition endorsements, including Mass Power Forward and the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition. We are going to have lobby days. We are going to have legislative briefings. We're going to use all of those tools that 350 Mass excels at using. But we're going to expand beyond that to activate our coalition both across the state and across issue areas, including the ones that Connie mentioned, including our environmental justice allies, and including new partners. The main way that we're going to do that is through early winnable victories in municipal resolutions, where a city or town votes to formally endorse legislation and notify their legislators that they've done so. We're going to help local groups organize envisioning sessions where they think about how they want to protect their communities, what climate risks they're facing, and use those to build momentum across all of our nodes to pass these resolutions. I think that we can support every single node passing one. We've already passed 4. We have 4 more lined up, and that puts us a good bit of the way there. In addition to that structure that we already have fleshed out, we're going to have space for creative actions. I hope all of you remember Anne's lamentation for the earth at our summit this past year. That stemmed, at least in part, from our creative team in the Make Polluters Pay campaign. We want to create space for folks to take creative action, whether that is dramatic street theater, whether that is projecting a protest message on the side of a building, or marching in the street with fantastic banners. There are so many ways to do this, and we're going to do it while bringing in climate disaster relief messaging and
30 seconds.
strong connections with other states, like we have on Wednesday. In just 2 days, we're going to be schlepping off to Albany to support them passing their bill, and we're going to expect them to help us right when it's our turn. So I'm so excited to have you all on board. We can only do this with 350 Mass providing strong leadership for this coalition. We are ready to go, and we need all of you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. So we got Make Polluters Pay. We can go now to questions, and I already see one in the chat from Fran. Why not use some of the money for mitigation? And there's some examples.
Yeah, so the point of a super fund is that it pays for harm caused. And because of that legal structure, we're obligated to use this to protect communities from the harms caused by fossil fuel production, not to mitigate the crisis itself. That doesn't mean that we're going to leave mitigation work behind, which is reducing emissions. We absolutely must keep doing that as 350 Mass, but we also need to prepare ourselves for the impacts that we know are coming. This is a yes and situation, not an either or situation.
I'm going to go to another question in the chat from Bauman. Is Make Polluters Pay only going to target fossil fuel companies, or can we also target industries which use and prop up fossil fuel products?
I'll try this one, Dan. Please add to it. I think we have a good metric for using for assigning responsibility to the top fossil fuel companies. I think it would be good if we get this done to kind of look beyond this for other responsible folks. But right now we're really focused on the major fossil fuel companies.
Yeah. And I would add, this is focused on fossil fuel companies, this specific campaign. There is other work that we do through 350 Mass in partnership with groups like Beyond Plastic, which Watertown Node's Eileen Ryan is a big leader within, that does focus on other polluters. But the goal of focusing on only the top oil and gas industry companies is that it makes it harder for them to raise prices for consumers. If we went after the whole market, they could just shift everything up, like a carbon tax. And by only going after the biggest oil and gas companies, we make it hard for them to coordinate legally and raise prices for all of us. And I do also want to lift up what Alan put in the chat, that there's a lot of overlapping between resilience and
Yes.
emissions mitigation. Insulating buildings is a great example. Also restoring wildlands for carbon sequestration, also building efficiency, all sorts of stuff like that.
All right, we'll go to Susan next.
Oh, thanks, Evan. Well, I remember meeting with our legislators, our local legislators out here in Berkshire County to ask for their support of the old bill last session for Make Polluters Pay. And we just had no nuts and bolts, no real definition of what we were asking for. You know, how it was going to be carried out, how it was going to be billed, you know, and basically our legislators kind of just laughed at us and said, why are you even bringing this to us? And it was kind of embarrassing. So I assume that this time, especially where we have Vermont to use as an example, and maybe New York, that maybe there'll be a lot more nuts and bolts and details about what we're proposing. I'm sure that this is not a criticism at all. It's just, you know, we need something concrete to put out there when we meet with our legislators. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Susan, I think that's a really fair point. Last time around, we had a single webinar close to the beginning of the campaign, and we put out our fact sheets, and that was largely it, besides some sporadic lobbying trainings where it was mentioned, but not the main focus. I think doing a lot more popular education is really important, and I'm really excited about the municipal resolutions as a vehicle to do that through, because they give us a chance to distribute municipal resolutions across the whole state, make sure that folks are able to take that on by themselves, while also educating them on the fine details of the bill.
All right, we'll go to
I would just add that I love the municipal resolutions because they both get the local legislators on board, and in the process really give us a way of spreading the word. I would say as we put materials out, if you have any questions, please ask us. If you think something's missing, please tell us. That's really important work as we move this forward.
All right, we'll go to Sarah Lyons.
I guess my question is kind of in post-election, to what extent both in that we can ally with other states, but also, you know, as we're about to get a cabinet of billionaires, to what extent are you seeing it also as a kind of resistance campaign? If you are at all, I don't know.
Yeah. Connie, after you.
Yes, I'm thinking about this. I guess I think I think we might be seeing everything as a resistance, and yet this is also very much, no matter who would have won the election, this is really important work that we have to do. And I originally said urgent because we need that funding to be in place sooner rather than later. We have already, the country as a whole, but even here in Massachusetts, we've had damage done and there's more danger ahead. So I think of it as something that really fits with the other campaigns that are about mitigation, about retrofitting, all of that. But different in that we need the funds to provide a better future.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would just add that we are likely on track for over 2 degrees of warming, and we absolutely need to maintain our work on mitigation and reducing emissions, but we also need to prepare for those impacts to get so much worse. And it's very likely there's not going to be much more funding coming from the federal government around resilience. And when you look at Climate Chief Hopper's plan, there's a big question mark when you get to the funding side for resilience. And this answers that question in a really powerful way on the scale of the crisis. And so I think we can frame it as resistance. I think that's really powerful messaging. And it's fundamentally about keeping our communities safe from what we know is coming.
So we have a little over 2 minutes left. So I'm going to go to Anne and then Jonathan. Go ahead, Anne.
Try and be quick, Jonathan. I've always found, and I'll just say it again, the Make Polluters Pay title really doesn't speak to me. I really wish there was a colon and it said Climate Superfund, because I do not think the general public thinks of climate as a pollution issue. And therefore, I think we lose an enormous education sound piece. And I'm not sure we have the power to change the title, given that some of the money has come from Rockefeller, et cetera. But I find this really, I really want to stress if we have any way and if other people agree. The other thing that I wonder about it is that if, as I understand it, we're going to ask for this bill asks for a lump sum of money based on percentage of harm evaluated. And I worry it's not enough money. I worry that we're getting this much money and then they're off. Okay, then they can go and keep making money and also don't have to give us any other money. And I just worry about that. And 3, and I'll stop. I'll put it in the chat and let Jonathan talk.
Yeah, I can give quick answers to both of those. For the first one, we can call it whatever we want. I believe the Maryland bill is called the Renew Act and really focuses on the renewal that the funding will offer to communities. For the second part, oh my God, sorry, my brain is blanking. Oh, the amount. So
Yeah.
one thing that we decided to do differently in this time around is instead of setting a specific amount that we're looking for, we're asking the Department of Environmental Protection and maybe the whole EEA, the Energy and Environmental Affairs Agency, to calculate what that looks like. So that number is going to come from their calculations, not from us. And on top of that, there's a clause in the bill that Alan just put in the chat, perfect timing, that says that this will not preclude other policies to hold the industry accountable. So this, for example, doesn't cancel out the lawsuit against Exxon that Governor Healy filed when she was Attorney General. And this bill itself won't end the fossil fuel industry, but it is one of many shots that we're firing against them as a broad international movement.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, and to be continued, Anne, in terms of possible names after that colon. I
So
did
we'll
have
do-
Make the Earth Green Again with green hats, just to counter the red that we're in right now. Evan.
All right, so we're going just a little bit over time. Maybe Jonathan, if you want to go and be the last question on this, and then we'll move to close.
Yeah, I'm just had a question about how in taking on the largest, most powerful companies in the planet, how likely do you think that it is will be able to actually pass something that requires them to pay money, given that they got unlimited resources to do all kinds of lawfare and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so in terms of passing the bill, that's largely up to us. We have a pretty incredible amount of power as a movement with our legislature, and it has passed in Vermont and hopefully, knock on wood, will soon in New York, which sets a fantastic precedent. In terms of actually getting the money into the state, that is going to be a hard push. And there are efforts being set up to support attorneys general, sorry, across the country as they do that. But that is going to be a significant part of it.
All right, I'm gonna stop us here. I know there's much more to say, and I do see people continuing to post in chat. So thank you, everybody, for continuing the conversation. And yeah, like, this is not the end. I think what we'll do from here is allow people to reach out, ask questions. I can share the contact for the different campaigns. You're always welcome to email me for one-stop shopping. I can quickly connect folks. I don't know if I introduced myself at the very beginning. My name's Evan. I'm the director of organizing at 350 Mass. My email is easy to remember. It's evan@350mass.org. And so what I'm going to do is stop spotlighting these wonderful people, and will instead share my screen with just like, what's next? What are we doing now? So, all right. So we just saw our campaign pitch meeting. We now have several sort of verbal and visual campaign pitches to review. And what I would invite everyone here to do is to bring this back to your community, whether you're part of a node or a working group, or you want to start a node, or you have some other team that you work with. Review these campaigns. And we have some information that can guide folks through a conversation. What we're going to ask every group to do is think through what is the most impactful for your group. What is the one that you would actually want to work on? And how would you rank them? Of these 6, which is your number 1? Which is your number 2? And then what we'll do is we'll come back together in February and have a conversation reviewing all of this feedback that we got. Oh, look, this was really exciting. People really love this campaign on the East Coast. People really love this campaign in the South Coast. People were really excited about this one over in the middle of the state. Through this conversation, we'll get to have a clearer picture of what 350 Mass should be doing. And so what I'm going to do in a moment is in the chat, share a link to RSVP for that February meeting. Everyone is invited, and I'll also share a link that is one-stop shopping for all things campaign. Everything you need to know about campaign prioritization, you'll be able to see there. I have my email up here again. I'm evan@350mass.org. I'm the director of organizing, but I'm not the one who's writing all of these campaigns. So my goal is to make sure you all get connected to the people who can answer your questions. Several of them have already offered their emails in the chat. I don't want to share your email without asking, but I know that a lot of the folks who pitched these campaigns have been really excited to talk through them, have a lot of wisdom to share that can go deeper into the finer nuances of the technology or the legislation or the politics of these campaigns. We're really lucky to have people who've put so much thought into these. So, I'll say it again at the end, but truly thank you all for coming up with these campaign pitches. And then we have some upcoming events. I'll share these links in the chat as well. But on Wednesday, all day, people are going to be going to Albany, New York, where we're going to tell Governor Hochul that she has to pass the Make Polluter Pay bill. Just like we have, New Yorkers have been fighting for a climate superfund bill, and it passed their Congress, and it is sitting on Governor Hochul's desk. And so starting tomorrow morning, activists from across the state, from across the region, are coming to Albany to do teach-in and sit-in in their Capitol building. And then on Wednesday, we're going to join them. I got a van, I rented it. We're going to drive across the state. We can pick people up along the way. A lot of folks have already signed up, but if you are like, oh my gosh, I did not sign up yet, let me know. Planning logistics. So yeah, that's on Wednesday. Also on Wednesday at noon, we have Lunch Climate Action, which is an event that is hosted by Connie and Sarah, who you've heard from a little bit tonight. And the topic this time is like a lunchtime, learn about an issue, take some action kind of activity. We do this monthly. And the topic this month is protecting our constitutional order. No small feat. And then lastly, I can pass it back to you, Dan, but we're going to be hosting a Better Future Project holiday party. Stan,
Yeah.
what's that?
Better Future Project is the umbrella organization, the fiscal sponsor for 350 Mass, Make Polluters Pay, and Crew, communities responding to extreme weather. And we are gathering with friends and allies and some elected officials to celebrate our shared work over the last year. We've done incredible things. We've changed the Massachusetts political arena on climate. We've passed first in the nation legislation, and we need to celebrate our victories because we have some hard times ahead. The only way you can do that is through community. So I hope you join us, especially if you're in the Cambridge and Somerville node, if you're in the Mystic node, if you're in Watertown, you have no excuse. Better schlep on over to Somerville to our brand new offices in Summer Nova and join us on Thursday, December 19th from 5:30 to 7:30. And there's more information about all of that at the link that I put in the chat. And I hope to see you there. I'm planning it, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Shout out to you for being party leader. I'm going to stop sharing my screen to get a bunch of these links in the chat to some of the upcoming events. I see some hands and would just ask, I can call on folks, but just make sure it's something that's applicable to everybody, because otherwise we can follow up after this. We don't have to keep all meeting together. So I'm going to stop sharing. And Jonathan, if you've got a question for the masses, go ahead. Can't hear you if you were saying something. Okay, I'll take that as a I'm good. Steve Brody.
Yes, would you be able to forward these campaigns by email, please? Or were you planning to do that anyway?
I definitely will. That's a great reminder, though. I'll be very explicit. So after this meeting, to everyone here who attended, but also like we can share this in the newsletter, we can share this far and wide. I'm going to share a link to all of the campaign pitches, like their full written format. I'll also share a link to this video so people can watch the campaign pitches. It'll be in the form of like a YouTube video. And we also have all the additional information that folks have shared, like the nitrogen pamphlet or the presentation that we saw from David and Mark. I want everyone to have all the information they need to have really great conversations in their nodes and working groups. The more information I think we have, the more we are able to like dig in and really imagine ourselves acting on these campaigns, the more fruitful our conversations will be, the better we'll be able to strategize and think through what we can really do as a community. So yeah, don't you worry. I'm going to follow up with all of this information. And John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that whatever campaigns we select through our process, those will be campaigns that we want all the nodes to participate in to sort of maximize our strength and our power. But there's nothing stopping any node from participating in any of the campaigns or projects that don't make the final cut, because we can't do all 6, but nodes can choose what they want to do in addition to whatever our statewide campaigns are.
Yeah, thank you. It's not the be all and end all, but it's what we choose to do with priority, because we sort of have been thinking about this word prioritization, not just, selection, not just what we do, but the things that we want to focus on a state level. But yeah, as John said, we're going to continue to do all kinds of good work together. Okay, I know I just posted a second link in the chat. That's to the specific campaign prioritization meeting. I'll also post, let's see, fun order. This is the winter holiday event. This is in Somerville, or come check out our office, come check out Aeronaut Brewery, come check out DJ, me, got all kinds of fun stuff going. And then lunch, climate, action, link here. And then the last one, this is hopefully going to be easy to find, but bit.ly/350 mass priorities will get you to the campaign page of our website, which is all the information you need. Alternatively, you can go to this link That's a lot of chat links. Thanks all for bearing with this long night. We did it in one meeting this time. 2 years ago, it took two. So shout out to everyone for sticking on for a little bit longer. Thanks to you at home who are watching this some other day. And yeah, like a final bit of appreciation for everyone who presented and pitched campaigns. It's a ton of work to fill that out. Thank you also to Paul Shorb, Debbie Marriott, Sarah Lyons, a lot of folks who helped set up this kind of meeting, Connie Henry, who've been big parts of thinking through what campaign selection could be. Yeah, it's like a ton of work, and there's this big thing that we're moving around slowly but thoughtfully, and it's democratic decision making, y'all. It's hard work, but it's beautiful work. So thanks you once again. Hey, 2 minutes till 9. Let's leave early. I'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, Evan.
Thanks to everyone that participated.
Well done. Well done.